Hey guys, what's up? I'm going to show you how to configure a Helios profile to control your LED indicators on your Virpil devices. This is a pretty sweet new feature. So let's jump in. I'm going to add interface, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to be adding a couple of my Virpil devices. I have a CM3 throttle that has a control panel 2 hooked into the aux port, so that'll act as a slave device. So we'll go ahead and add that. We will also add my TCS Plus, so that's going to be my collective, and I've got the Blackhawk grip on that. And I'll go ahead and add my left stick. So that's going to be a Warbird base with a left alpha prime, and so that should be enough to get our hands dirty a little bit here. So, well, let's take a look real quick at what we have here now in Helios as far as these Virpil devices. So if I expand my throttle here, I've got the set default command. And so what that's going to do is it's going to send the default command to the device, and that is going to set all of the indicators on the device and any slave devices connected to it to the factory defaults. So for the CM3, for me, that's just going to be turn all the lights yellow. I don't really find that command too useful, but it's there. Add-on grips, that's not used for the throttle at all. And so the big ones here are going to be onboard LEDs and slave LEDs. And so the onboard LEDs command is going to allow you to set the LED indicators for the main device, the throttle itself, because I have my throttle plugged directly into the PC via USB. And then for the slave LEDs, that's going to allow me through the throttle to control the LEDs on the slave device, which again is the control panel number 2. And so if we pop open these images here, you have I found these on the Virpil forums, and so you've got 1 through 6 on the CM3 throttle, and then on the control panel 2, you've got 17 indicators here, just in case you're trying to figure out. I mean, you could pretty easily just guess and check as you start to mess around with this stuff for yourself, setting the indicators to what you'd want them to be. So let's start off with just setting all 6 of these to, let's just make them all red. And so let me throw a panel just as a little workspace up here. Let's just throw this generic backplate up on the workspace so here in the canvas. And just for simplicity's sake, let's throw out a single button here to do our first test. And we will eventually add more, showing you guys some more functionality. So I'm going to call this, let's just call it CM3 onboard. All right. Font's a little aggressive there. All right, cool. It's a little small, but it'll get the job done. So with the button selected, let's go ahead and hook something up into the pushed binding. So when we push the button, what do we want it to do? Well, let's go ahead and set indicator 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the onboard LEDs of the CM3 throttle. And so over here you can see this little helper. We've got basically an RGB setting, and so if you're familiar with just like a editing color on the web, so here's our alpha. We'll just go full alpha, so FF, and then we'll go full red and go no green, no blue. And so that's going to be your max value for red there. This should look pretty familiar to you. Full red, full green, full blue would be white. And so let's go ahead and copy that over to, well, let's just change the colors a little bit here. So on the second indicator, we'll make that green. And then on the third indicator, we'll make that blue. And then on the fourth indicator, let's do a combine red and green. And then let's combine red and blue. And then let's combine green and blue. Cool. So we'll save that off. Let's take a look at that. All right, cool. Let's take a look in the control center and take a look at these onboard indicators. So fire that up. Go ahead and click our button there. And you can see here that the onboard indicators have turned on. Cool. Let's go ahead and throw another button up there. Actually, let's just go ahead and copy paste. Change this one to slave-board. And go ahead. I'm going to move this out of my way. And let's try and set some of these slave LEDs on the control panel. So we'll just set 4 of them for now. I think you get the hang of it. So red. Green. And blue. And we'll just set this one to, I believe that's yellow. So we'll fire that up again. And you should see red, green, blue, yellow. And so this B1, B2, if we look again at the the sheet here, this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So not necessarily exactly as they're labeled, but you get the hang of it, you'll figure that out. And so that is onboard and slave board. Again, if you were to have your control panel plugged directly into your PC via USB, those would be onboard lights in that configuration. This is plugged directly into my throttle here. And so that's going to be the slave board. What else do we have here? So add-on grips. We could set this light here on the collective, if you can see that. We could try that out. We also have this new extra LEDs command for setting all, I believe, 9 LEDs here in the Alpha Prime, starting from the bottom up, and then I believe from the front to the back of the top of the stick. And so if we go ahead and throw a new button up here for, let's go extra LEDs and clear this out. We'll come over, collapse the throttle, expand the left stick, which is my Alpha Prime. Go over here to extra LEDs. And let's do 5 indicators. And again, I believe this should be from the bottom up here. And let's just set these all to red so you can see that that's happening. Cool. Save that, start it back up. Extra LEDs. Oh, I set that to white. Oops. Let's try that again. There you go, you've got all red on that. Last one we can check out here on the collective. Hopefully you can see that on the camera. Let's call this add-on grips. Cool. So add-on grips. We'll set the single indicator here on our collective. Just one light here. When we push it, let's go ahead and set it to green. Cool. Save that away. Start it up again. Add-on grips. It is now green. Cool. So we can get a little more fancy with some of these configurations as far as hooking things up to a wire, depending on other scenarios, and we'll check that out next. So let's hook a piece of data up to an indicator. First, we'll start with just a simple button push and release from the collective itself, and then we'll move on to connecting some game data. I'll use the AH64. That's what I fly most these days. Then we'll pop into the game, or into the sim rather, and we will just like a ground override and a master arm, and have one of these lights up here turn to green or red or something like that. Before we do that, let's take a look at the interface for the collective here. And I want to see what this red button is. Okay, so that's button number 12. So I'm pushing the one with the LED indicator around it. And so now I know to go look for 12. And so I'm going to come over here, and I know I'm going to need a wire. So the wire's input's going to be the button push and release, button 12, and the output's going to be telling the LED indicator to set itself to a given color that we give it. So let's find our wire control. Let's drag it out on the canvas, and the input for monitor. So let's call this wire. Call it button. It's going to be used for the button push, monitor, wire button, and so we don't want to view the wire itself or select it on the wire. We want to come here and go to button 12, pressed, set the text signal, and release, set the text signal. So wire lets us set numeric signals, Boolean signals, text signals. We're going to take advantage of the text signal because we can actually throw the color in there as the text value and kind of shortcut the complexity of potentially having to write like a custom condition. And so let's go, when I'm holding it down, when it's pressed, I want it to be red. And when it's released, I want it to be green. So RGB, cool. So that's simply going to take input from button 12 and throw these text values on the wire. And so with the wire still selected, we'll go to output and current signal on this wire. So we're going to be leveraging the signal that's on the wire, and it's going to be one of those two color values depending on if button 12 is pressed or released. And so we're going to come over to our collective and set add-on grips indicator 1, and we're going to use the trigger value because that is what's going to be on the wire. And so let's go see if we did that correctly. Start it up, and so if you can see this, if I press it, hold it, it's red. When I release it, it's green. So pretty cool. So the wire is going to enable us to do all sorts of things, read in some data from an interface, whatever we might want to read in from, and go ahead and press out to into one of these indicators or several indicators, right? So that was a simple, I mean, that looks kind of cool. I don't know if you'd actually use that, but let's look at some game data now. All right, cool. So what I did, I added the AH64 Delta interface to my profile here. Redid my monitor config as I got a bunch of monitors plugged in when I'm actually running the sim. Threw everything that I had worked on over to monitor 1. The main sim is going to be running on monitor 2 here. And so added the new wire. And so what does this wire do? Let's take a look at this. This is wire 64. It's going to take an input of the 64's armament panel pilot ground override on indicator changed. And so you can see as I hover over it, value type of Boolean. And so it's going to be true when it's on, false when it's off. And so we're going to go ahead and we've dragged that over to our set Boolean signal here on the wire now. Unable to be setting text, just given the fact that the value here is a Boolean. And so we're going to get that trigger value on the wire as the input, either that true or false. And so if we come over to the output of the wire, we will be responding to the Boolean signal changed. And then here wrote a really simple script here, just a single if. So if that trigger value is true, then return RGB, so green, else return the color, excuse me, the color, which is basically just turning the light off. Also no red, no green, or blue. And so when the ground override's on, we're gonna have green, and when ground override is off, we will have the light off. As you can see right now, it is off. The sim is running in the background. I'm going to pop that open, and we'll have a look. So here we are in the 64, and you can see here our ground override is off. If you're watching the B2 indicator, which is indicator 1 on the slave board, it is now on and off, on and off. And we could do the same thing over here for the arm and safe if we wanted to. And so let's go hook that up real quick so you can see that live. So we'll paste that. And don't care what the name is. The input is going to be the arm indicator, which is also a Boolean. And that's for the pilot. And the true or false is going to be on the wire. It's the input. And the output will be, let's set indicator 2, which is going to be B1 here of the slave board. I'm going to grab that script from that one, paste it over. And so instead of green and off, let's go red for armed and green for safe. And see what we get there. And so I'm gonna stop and start on my control center that's off the screen. So now I've got another wire hooked up to that piece of game data. And so unable to go on arm unless ground override's on. If you're familiar with the 64. So ground override, and we'll arm. So that didn't work. Let's see what happened there. Let's see here. Input. So trigger value when that changes. All right. Output. Indicator 2. Oh, should probably set that to Lewis script. That'd be helpful. All right, let's try that again. There we go. And you could change that to yellow or even orange if you wanted. Pretty darn simple. And so we'll go ahead and change that to yellow. And so instead of red, we'll throw a little bit of green in there. And save that. Run it again. And there you go. Now it's yellow. Pretty cool stuff, but yeah, play around with it. And like I said, you know, there's a bunch you can do. You can go to factory defaults. You got anti grips, onboard LEDs, slave LEDs. You saw on the other wire, I had this example of turning an indicator off with the absence of all the color. You can also play around with the alpha if you're curious and messing with some of the brightness levels of the indicators. You can reset all the indicators and turn them all off. So maybe when you start the profile, you want to go ahead and kill all the LEDs and then let the game data, sim data control kind of what gets lit up from there. But yeah, thanks for checking this out, and happy flying.